Okay, let's just start by turning. Pausing a sec. And now knocking the gates of life. So just flinging the hands forwards and back. Check the feet. And now the breathing. Flexing the spine, just getting the spine to arch and then to flex to bow. So the mind with the tail. My tail is pointing under. My tail is pointing back. So as the body and the mind relax and the mind starts to quieten, the two modes of the mind become apparent. So what we call attention and intention. So attention is just that quietness, that quiet listening presence. So you attend the Tai Chi class. You go along in order to be present and to absorb the energy and the teaching. And then the intention is really just the direction, the instruction, and also the movement. It's the energy that gets the action going. So our minds tend to be all over the place. So we're neither really present nor listening, and neither is the mind really intending. So everything tends to be ruled by anxiety. This is what meditation shows you. Even when you think that you're operating from a place of decisiveness, it's generally fraught with anxiety. So when we're doing these movements, the mind is becoming quiet inside them. And then you start to sense the mind that is actually responsible for the movement. It's something that seems to be in the background of where you normally are, but that's your mind. It's your mind that's doing the movements. So let's just bring the feet up. Legs bent again, heels out. Now just tipping side to side. So the mind is still and observing, really listening to what's happening. So that's the attention. And then just feel the part of your mind that's just doing this act. It's almost like a lofty mind. It seems to be outside of the normal space that we consider the mind. Almost like it's something is intending you rather than you intending the movement. So the intention is the mind that sets things in motion. So I intend to go to the Tai Chi class this evening. And then you find yourself there in the evening. You haven't been thinking about it all day, but the intention has just lent it an inevitability. There's no question, there's no choice. So intention is all about the choiceless life, about not leaving options open and not changing your mind at the last minute. And so like a reliability and a loyalty, a sense of honor. Feeling the tail. So my tail is pointing here as my head is pointing in the same direction. So my tail is sort of going down the leg and cutting under. Attention, we call that the yielding phase of mind. So it's just listening. And then intention is like the attacking phase of mind. So when you're listening to the other, you're listening to their intention so that you can yield to their intention and turn it back on them. So where there's energy, there's intention. Energy is the flow of intention. It's not necessarily your mind that's doing the intending, but if there's energy, there must be intention, some mind. Yours, someone else's, or like the universal mind is intending. And then just a little bit wider, but not as wide as we normally are. Figure of 8ing, but trying to keep the sacrum in the middle. And it's like, if you imagine you've got like a sort of, like a thick ribbon hanging from your sacrum, just down a little bit. So what you're trying to do is flick this ribbon along this figure of 8. So the hips are sort of tilting and moving. So I'm figure of 8ing with my tail rather than my sacrum. So the tailbone, your coccyx, has to become flexible. Bringing the heels up one at a time. Feel as though this action of bringing the heel up is also throwing the tail around that foot. So all the time you're trying to keep the sacrum just hanging heavily through this. You don't want the heel coming up to push the sacrum up. The heel coming up just somehow just loosens this area. We're looking for real fluid flexibility in the hips. Hips, sacroiliacs, sacrum, tail, and the lower spine from the min-meng down. Bring it back to a stationary riding horse. We just want to feel the sacrum held very loosely. So all the movements that we've been doing have just freed the sacrum up. So the sacrum can sort of move in any plane. It can tip back, it can tip forwards, it can tilt to the side. And so the more freedom it has, the more energy, basically. But it's like a potential energy. It's like soul or spirit. Potential movement, this is what we want. So when something is still in Tai Chi, it's full of potential movement. It shimmers. Our attentive mind, if you like, the attentive mind is the one that precedes the intention, the intensive or the intentive mind. So the listening, it has to be a really open listening. You're not contained in a closed system. Every possible gateway is open. And that really takes a lot of concentration to keep those pathways open. So here, the joints here are open. So I'm having to constantly drive through them. Otherwise, they'll just naturally close off. Not naturally, but because that's what we're used to. We're used to a closedness, which is the ego. The ego is like the shell that surrounds all of your thoughts and feelings. And so we're used to that being so closed that it's almost impermeable. So that's what we need to open up so that there can be actual communication, because what normally passes for communication is not communication at all. It's not really an energy exchange. It's just a barrage of conflicting opinions. Especially here, the sacroiliacs, really feeling that they're pushing open all the time. So your legs start to feel like two hoses of water, and you're being held up by the force of the pressure through them, rather than by just locking the joints in the legs. Openness is crucial. Without it, there's no energy. The openness, it's like a positive disposition. You're positively disposed to possibility. So like a sunny disposition, someone that's just always sort of just positive and cheerful. So that's the attention. So it's like, coming to the Tai Chi class, you have to come willing to listen, not just willing to listen, but willing to agree with what you hear, even though it may go against your intuition. And it's that willingness to listen, that positive, smiling willingness to listen, that actually stimulates the teaching to expose itself. So without the listener, there's no teaching. Without the good, open, attentive, practicing student, the teaching it won't bother to expose itself. There has to be that stimulus. The full and empty. So this is so important, this exercise. So when I come into the leg, I fill not with my weight, but with the ground's energy that comes up. And then as I leave it, that energy flushes out. So if I think of something coming up from the ground, then the leg is struggling to remain as relaxed as it can be, because if it gets tight, then it will close off and the energy won't come up. So this is just visualizing in order to assist the energy. So our hands assist the movement of the energy. So it's like your hands are the intention, it's the mind intending. Keep the hands just doing the job and just let your mind become the hands. So one is bringing the energy up and the other one is letting the energy leave. So my leg has to remain relatively relaxed as I come into it so that it can fill up from the ground. And I want to get across the sacrum to remain relaxed. So the energy is coming up here, but down here. So it's basically just a circuit. And that's what I'd like to feel. As it comes up one leg, it then passes across the sacrum and goes down the other. So the legs must become soft and energetic. Otherwise, there'll always be a barrier between you and the ground. And then bringing the energy up and into the opposite arm. So here, this hand now starts bringing the energy up the back leg and just directs it into the opposite arm. So it just becomes this exercise from the warm-up exercises we do. So as I come into the leg, energy is rising up. So the leg is yielding. So yielding is a becoming round, and attacking is a becoming straight. So my leg becomes round, and that beckons and draws the ground up into me. And similarly, the arm becoming bent would draw the opponent into me. And then this arm becoming straight is obviously an attack. So the attack is the energy leaving the body. The yield is the energy coming into the body. Bring the other foot forwards. Part of your mind is simply present, listening, and cheerful. And part of your mind is directing this movement. So if your mind wanders and you lose your awareness of those two aspects of mind, then just bring it back. And that will help you feel the intention. So as you bring your mind back to presence and intention, you really see what intention is. So your attention is like a space, like a room. You're filling it with intention, you're filling it with energy. So without the attention, without that clear, empty room, there's no space for the intention. And then bringing the energy up and into the opposite arm. So here the energy comes up my back leg and into my front hand. And when you let the energy out, just really release this whole side. My shoulder's releasing, so let the hand move forwards. But this joint is also releasing, and here, to let the leg almost fall away from the hip and the sacroiliac. Letting the energy out is difficult because it requires real relaxation, the willingness to let go of what you think is yours. But without being able to let the energy out clearly and cleanly, you won't be able to take energy in either. So everything will be forceful. Okay, so let's just bring it back to bow and arrow. And now let's just go backwards and forwards and just feel that point of it changing direction. So what I want to feel is the activity in the leg that has become empty. So I bring the weight forwards and the leg fills, and then I just empty that leg. And now I want that emptying to be perceived as a tentacle, the limb of the octopus that has just reached out in order to pull something in, like it's found a piece of food or something floating in the water, and it just reaches out and the tentacle contracts. It doesn't have an arm, so it doesn't have to bend it to articulate it. It just shrinks. The tentacle shrinks in and that morsel comes in. So this is how we want to feel the energy in the legs and the arms. Boneless, really. So as I go back, this tentacle comes out, and then I just want to feel that point where it starts pulling in, and then this tentacle here, and feel that point where it starts pulling in. The tentacle has reached out, and then it draws. And just feel the feeling. So imagine the octopus there in the water. They're incredibly intelligent. So imagine this sort of tentacle just reaching out, and the feeling inside the creature as it just makes contact. There'd be like a ping, there'd like be a little spark of electricity and excitement and interest. So that's the feeling here. My tentacle is going out, and then I start pulling. And what I want to do is just make a little trigger to get the pull started. And to do that, I just lift my heel, because it's the toes that are like the end of the tentacle. So if I can just take the heel off the ground, and I break the root a little bit. I break my stickiness with the ground and allow the toes just to become very active. So my weight goes back, and then I just lift the heel, and that is enough to start me pulling in. And then here, this heel just lifts, and that is enough to start me pulling back. So it's just a different visualization. You're becoming the octopus. You've got these tentacles, and you just lift the heel, and then the tentacle starts to retract. And if it feels like you're not getting anywhere near 100% in the foot, don't worry. So this is really just playing in some sort of mid-range. We're just trying to, again, look at the intention. So my mind has to be quiet so that there's this clear space where I can then observe the activity. intention is not just simply deciding to do something. It's a quality of energy. So my tentacles coming out, and then, so that's the intention. The intention is just this spark, this feeling, this sensuality, this erotic sense of reality that actually makes the movement turn the other way. So imagine the intention of the octopus, the sort of quality of its mind. It's not worrying, it's not thinking. It's just full of feeling, full of sense. I mean, they feel so much, they change color, don't they? To send the tentacle out and then just lift the heel gently and it will start pulling in. So there's just a little explosion at that moment of you lifting the heel, just enough to get the energy to reverse. What was going out starts coming in. And now just a little bit with the other foot forwards. An outside edge forwards. If anything, we want that front foot really pointing in. Just want to really feel the heels. Want the heels just to feel really big and dominant. So I bring the energy up to start, and then I just let it flush out. And then I just lift the heel a little bit and it will just start contracting. That heel lift, it's really just the beginning of the yield, the beginning of the becoming round, the beginning of the ward-offing. So the leg is straight, the heel lifts, and it starts to bend. And that reverses me. So it's that point where attack changes to yield. That's what we really want to look at and expose in all its feeling. The left foot forwards again. And now basically the same thing. So let's just start just doing what we've just been doing. So I go back, this leg becomes the tentacle that's reached the ground. Then I lift the heel. And that's the beginning of bending the leg, which is what's responsible for bringing me forwards. And then this heel lifts and that draws me back. This heel lifts, that starts me coming forwards. And then we want to just feel the figure of eight. So here I'm releasing the tentacle down, the heel comes up, and then I want to feel this drawing forwards as a figure of eight. A figure of eight in my foot, a figure of eight that coils in. So let's try it. So I'm in the back foot. I just lift the front heel. So the figure of eight starts in my big toe. So my big toe is the part of my foot that's still on the ground. And then I just trace this figure of eight around my foot until I'm back in the big toe. And then this heel comes up, this one here. And again, as that foot goes down, I trace the figure of eight. And then here, this heel comes up, and as it goes down. So the feeling is that your weight going into the foot is tracing a figure of eight. So the foot is sort of writhing on the ground. It's twisting and turning. So we want the feet to be really, really active, not just in a kicking sense, but sort of activity within the foot. And again, just get it in the hand to start with. So it's the intending mind again. My mind is intending this figure of eight. So we just have to just continue with an exercise long enough for you to relax into it and for it to basically have become a meditation. Because what we have to really guard against, human beings do, is the possibility of the intending mind going against nature. So we want what we do to be natural. This is one of the very important concepts in Tai Chi. As Dr. Chi put it, natural way, best way. So if you can feel it, if it feels good, if it feels natural, and you can bring this into the form. So every time you put your foot down, just put it down very slowly. So put the big toe down first. And then as you bring your weight into it, just allow your hand, your foot, and your waist to do a figure of eight. So the heel comes up, the big toe, and then around the heel and around through the toes to the big toe. So you start in the big toe and you end in the big toe, by which point the weight is in the foot and you can then step with the other one. So it's just a slow movement really into the foot, but a movement that has shape, a movement that has been intended, rather than just clumsily arrived at with no mind whatsoever. So I just let the energy leave the leg. I lift the heel, and then as I come into it slowly, I do a figure of eight. So by the time the figure of eight has finished, I'm as much in that foot as I need to be. And then this heel comes off the ground. And as it goes down, figure of eight. So the figure of eight is really what draws you into the foot. It gets the foot on the ground and it pulls you over into it. Bring it back to riding horse. So one of the problems all the time with Tai Chi, that it tends not to sink. So there comes a point where you think that you're sunk, and then you get all of this stuff going on in the upper body. So the figure of eight, or the arms swinging, or whatever, the arms moving in Tai Chi. Sinking is not just something that I'm never sunk enough. I should always be sinking, always be getting lower and lower, in the sense of it being a flow through the body. I'm flowing into the ground. So the only way you're really going to let that happen is if you're very comfortable being close to the ground. So you need strong legs, and you need to be able to squat down so that these joints need to be very open. Just getting really low and just getting used to it and getting to enjoy it. Like they say, you know, the only way you're going to practice something is if you find it enjoyable, is if there's something in it that just really sparks your interest and your pleasure. All of these things, just feeling the truth of them. So just getting down into like a deep squat and just feeling just how much more peaceful it feels when your dantian is almost touching the ground. So wherever you find yourself relative to the ground, doesn't matter how low you get, that is not the limit of your sinking. You can go lower, even if it means melting into the ground. So psychologically, that's one of the reasons we just don't like the ground. That's where we know we'll end up. It's sort of almost synonymous with death. And it's dirty, you know, so all that. You know, we're so damn hygienic nowadays. This thing of sort of touching the ground is just anathema. And just feeling the soles of the feet on the ground. Imagine you're going to touch someone. Someone is in pain and you want that touch to sort of heal them in some way. Then you'd have a lot of feeling in your hand, a lot of sensitivity. You'd really listen. And you'd be willing, you'd be really intending some sort of flow. Same with the feet, so that my feet are healing the ground all the time. It's the least we can do. given how much damage we do to the planet, the least we can do is just feel as though our feet are healing in some little way. And then just bringing it up. Straightening the legs, but I don't want to really. So the sacrum is still loose, the same looseness it had when I was in the riding horse. So we just want this feeling, this real movement. It can move in any direction. And I want to really feel the intention. As I flick my hip up at the side, I become a little bit coy. It's like I'm playing games. I'm communicating with what's beyond me. Same if I pull my tail under, that's got a sense of me cowering almost. When I send my tail back, it brings a cheerfulness into my eyes. So these feelings, that in a sense is the intention. The intention isn't this serious mind that's saying, okay, I'm going to do this. It's the feeling. And all the time, part of your mind with the sole of the foot. The sole of my foot is sucking energy from the ground, and it's also passing energy down into the ground. You can think like with the palm, when you put your hand on someone, it's as though the middle of the palm is sort of drawing from them, and it's the outside of the hand that's actually seeping into them. So you're sort of doing this all the time. You're warding off, you're receiving with your heart, and your back is extending the arms around. It's the same with the hands and the feet. So it feels like the middle of my foot, my bubbling well, and my instep is just sucking from the ground. And my toes and my outside edge and my heel are just curling around what it is that's coming up.